Please subscribe to my channel. This is my sincere request to you. He thought smashing my phone would stop the truth. The crack of plastic against hardwood still echoes in my nightmares. He thought bruises would scare me into silence, that a stepdaughter's word meant nothing against his. But he forgot I spent 3 years at a law firm learning to read the fine print. He forgot about the security camera on Grandpa's mantel, the one that caught everything while he destroyed my phone. They wanted me to disappear quietly. Instead, I serve them court papers at Sunday dinner. My name is Jenner Walsh, and I've been invisible in my own family for 17 years. Not the kind of invisible where people literally don't see you, but the kind where they look through you, past you, around you, anywhere but at you. It started the day my mother married Ron Dorset. I was 12 when Dad died. Cancer took him in 6 months, leaving Mom and me clutching each other in a funeral home that smelled like leaves and grief. For a year, it was just us against the world. Then Ron showed up at her book club, all salt and pepper charm, and practiced sympathy. Mom fell hard and fast, the way lonely people do when someone offers to carry their pain. The wedding happened 8 months later. I stood there in my scratchy lavender bridesmaid dress, watching my mother promise to love the man who'd already shown me his true face. The night before the ceremony, he'd cornered me in the kitchen and said, "Your mom deserves a fresh start. Don't ruin this for her." His smile never reached his eyes. Ron had 2 sons from his first marriage, Kyle and Trent, both older than me, and cut from their father's cloth. They moved into our Portland home like conquering armies taking over the den, the garage, the very air we breathed. Suddenly, there were new rules. No calling Dad's relatives without permission. No talking about the past at dinner. No visiting Grandpa Peter, Dad's father, without Ron's approval. Grandpa Peter. God, I missed him. After Dad died, he'd wanted me to come live with him on his farm outside Salem. He'd raised Dad alone after Grandma died, and he was ready to do it again. But Mom couldn't let me go, and Ron made sure the visit stopped altogether. It's unhealthy, he'd say, dwelling on the past like that. The old man fills her head with stories about her father. She needs to move forward. So I did what I had to do. I kept my head down, studied hard, and counted the days until college. Got a degree in legal studies, partly to spite Ron, who said I wasn't leadership material, and partly because I'd learned early that knowing the law was the only protection people like me had against people like him. Landed a job at Brennan and Associates, a mid-sized estate law firm in downtown Portland. Nothing glamorous, but paralegal work paid the bills and kept me close to what mattered, understanding how power worked on paper. I hadn't seen Grandpa Peter in over a decade. Ron made sure of that, always finding reasons why visits couldn't happen. Mom grew quieter over the years, her voice fading into whatever Ron wanted to hear. I'd send Grandpa birthday cards when I could sneak them out, but I never knew if he got them. Then, last Tuesday at 9:45 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer. "Miss Walsh, this is Margaret Hammond from Sacred Heart Hospital in Salem. I'm calling about Peter Walsh. I'm afraid. I'm very sorry, but he passed away this afternoon." The world tilted. I sat down hard on my kitchen floor, pressing the phone to my ear like I could rewind her words. Grandpa was gone. The last piece of my father. The last person who remembered me as I used to be gone. "He asked for you," Margaret continued gently several times. "And there's a note here that you're to be contacted about arrangements. Something about a will reading." My heart hammered against my ribs. A will reading, which meant Grandpa had left something behind, which meant, don't even think about it. Ron's voice cut through my thoughts when I called Mom an hour later. He must have grabbed the phone from her. That old man's been senile for years. Whatever he left, Claire handles it as next of kin. You're not needed. But for the first time in 17 years, I didn't back down. I had the law on my side now, and more importantly, I had nothing left to lose. "I'll be there," I said, and hung up on his sputtering rage. The drive to Grandpa's farmhouse took 2 hours through morning fog that clung to the Willamette Valley like a burial shroud. I left Portland at 6:30 a.m., ignoring 3 calls from Ron and 1 trembling text from Mom. "Please don't make trouble." The old property looked smaller than I remembered, paint peeled from the wraparound porch where Grandpa used to teach me chess. The oak tree I'd climbed as a kid cast shadows over a yard gone wild with neglect. My throat tightened. How long had he been struggling alone while I stayed away like a coward? Ron's black BMW sat in the driveway like a predator. Beside it, Kyle's truck and Trent's Audi. The whole clan had descended. My ancient Honda looked pathetic next to their show of force, but I parked it anyway and walked to the front door on legs that wanted to run. They were already in the living room. Ron stood by the fireplace holding papers every inch the executive in his pressed suit. Mom perched on Grandpa's favorite chair, looking pale and small. Kyle and Trent flanked the couch like bodyguards, both scrolling through their phones with practiced boredom. "You're late," Ron said without looking up. "The reading's not until noon. Where's Mr. Kessler?" Martin Kessler had been Grandpa's attorney for 30 years. Dad had trusted him completely. Change of plans. Ron's smile was sharp as broken glass. Peter updated his will a few months ago, used a different lawyer, someone more modern. We don't need to wait for Kessler. Every instinct screamed danger. You can't read a will without the attorney present. That's not how it works. Since when are you an expert? Kyle looked up from his phone board. Dad says Grandpa left him instructions. Family only. She is family. Mom whispered, but Ron's look silenced her. Barely, Trent added. When's the last time you even visited the old man? The accusation stung because it was true. But I knew whose fault that was. I want to see the will. Ron held up the papers. Of course, it's all here. Peter realized in his final months that Claire, as his daughter-in-law, should inherit the estate. She'll ensure it's distributed fairly among the family. All of it. My voice came out steadier than I felt. The house, the land, his investment portfolio. Everything. Ron's eyes glittered. He wanted to keep it simple. One beneficiary. Less complicated that way. I studied the document. He waved like a victory flag. Something was off about the signature line. The way the ink sat too heavy on the page. I want to examine it. You don't trust your own mother. Ron stepped between me and the papers. This is what Peter wanted. Accept it gracefully or what? I pulled out my phone, activating the video recorder with practiced subtlety. You'll cut me out completely. Danny from the funeral. You've already done your worst. Ron. His face darkened. Watch yourself, little girl. I'm recording this. I kept my voice calm, angling the phone to catch him and the papers. For the record, when was this will supposedly signed? 2 months ago. He was getting agitated, pacing now, right after his last hospital visit. He knew he didn't have Wall. Which hospital? Who witnessed it? I stepped closer, trying to get a clear shot of the document. Why wasn't Kessler involved if Grandpa was making major changes? Enough questions. Ron's composure cracked. You waltz in here after abandoning him for years. Because you wouldn't let me visit. The words exploded out. Every time I tried, you found a reason. Mom was sick. You had plans. It wasn't a good time. Stop recording. His voice dropped to a whisper. Kyle and Trent stood up, suddenly interested. No, I kept filming. I want everything on record. The will, your claims, all of it. If this is legitimate, you have nothing to hide. That's when he lunged. Not at me, at my phone. His hand closed around my wrist with crushing force, yanking me forward. I heard Mom gasp, heard my own cry of pain as he twisted my arm, forcing me to drop the phone. Ron, don't. Mom started, but he was already stomping on it. Once, twice, 3 times, the screen shattering under his heel. The sound seemed to echo in the silent room. Oops, he said, grinding the remnants under his shoe. Accidents happen. Then his fist connected with my ribs. Not hard enough to break anything. Ron was too smart for that. Just hard enough to drive the air from my lungs, to send me stumbling backward into the wall. You need to leave, he said, calmly, adjusting his tie. Now. I clutched my side, tasting copper in my mouth. Mom sat, frozen tears streaming down her face. Kyle and Trent watched with identical smirks, and I realized they'd seen this before. This was who Ron was when the mask slipped. The will reading. I gasped. Is family only. He picked up my destroyed phone, dropping the pieces into my hand. "And you just proved you're not family. Get out before I call the police. Tell them you're trespassing. I looked at Mom one last time." She opened her mouth closed. It looked away. 17 years of silence stretched between us. I left cradling my ribs and the broken phone. But as I fumbled for my car keys, I felt the memory card in my pocket, the one that had popped out when the phone hit the floor. Ron thought he'd destroyed the evidence. He was wrong. The drive back to Portland was agony. Every breath sent fire through my ribs. Every turn of the wheel made my wrist throb where Ron had grabbed it. I pulled into the first urgent care clinic. I found my hands shaking as I filled out the intake forms. How did this happen? The doctor, a kind woman named Dr. Martinez, gently probed the purple bruise spreading across my rib cage. I fell. I lied the words, ash in my mouth. She gave me a long look but didn't push. The x-rays showed no breaks, just deep tissue bruising. She documented everything, took photos from my medical record, and prescribed pain medication I knew I wouldn't take. I needed to stay sharp. Back in my apartment at 8:00 p.m., I dug out an old laptop and inserted the memory card with trembling fingers. "Please work," I prayed. "Please." The video file opened, shaky, partially obscured, but there Ron's voice clear as day. "We need to get this done before Kessler shows." Man's been sniffing around asking questions. Then Kyle's response. "How much did you say the old man had in those investment accounts?" "Enough to make this worth it," Ron answered. The video cut off as the phone hit the ground, but those 20 seconds were gold. Evidence of premeditation. Evidence of conspiracy. Evidence that would hold up in court. I spent the night researching the real will would be filed with the probate court within days of death, standard procedure. But when I checked the online records at 2 a.m., nothing had been filed for Peter Walsh. Ron was stalling, probably trying to destroy any copies of the real will before filing his forgery. At 9 a.m., sharp the next morning, I called Martin Kessler's law office. "Brennan and Associates, how may I direct your call?" The receptionist's voice was professionally cheerful. "I need to speak with Martin Kessler regarding Peter Walsh's estate." "This is Jenner Walsh, Peter's granddaughter." The pause was telling. "One moment, please." "Please." Kessler was on the line within seconds. "Jenner, thank God. I've been trying to reach someone for days. When did Peter pass?" My stomach dropped. "Tuesday afternoon." "You didn't know?" "No one informed me." His voice was tight with controlled anger. "I'm Peter's attorney of record. I had his will properly executed and witnessed 6 months ago." "Who told you otherwise?" "Ron Dorset, my stepfather. He claims Grandpa wrote a new will 2 months ago, leaving everything to my mother." The silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Then can you come to my office immediately? And Jenner, tell no one about this call." Kessler's office was in a converted Victorian in southeast Portland, all dark wood and legal gravitas. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 50s, with silver at his temples and eyes that missed nothing. The real will sat on his desk in a leather folder. "Peter was very specific," he said, opening to the signature page. "He came in last January, shortly after a minor's stroke. Said he wanted to ensure his wishes were crystal clear." I read through tears. The will was simple, direct, utterly. "Grandpa to my granddaughter Jenner Marie Walsh. I leave my entire estate, including all real property, financial accounts, and personal effects. She is the only family who carries her father's spirit. The rest are vultures who can pick over their own conscience." He knew, I whispered. He knew what they were. He also knew they might try something. Kessler pulled out another folder, which is why he had me document everything. Video recordings of the will, signing 2 witnesses from my staff, notarized affidavit. He even did a cognitive evaluation to prove he was of sound mind. "Ron has a forged will. He's probably already converting assets." Kessler's expression hardened. "Then we move fast. First, we file the real will with probate court today. Second, we petition for an emergency injunction to freeze all of Peter's accounts. Third," he paused, studying my bruised wrist. "What happened to your arm?" I told him everything. The confrontation, the assault, the destroyed phone. When I showed him the salvaged video clip, his eyes lit up like a prosecutor who'd just been handed a smoking gun. "This changes things," he said. "This isn't just about a will contest anymore. This is fraud, assault, elder abuse, and conspiracy. We need to involve the authorities. Will they believe me?" Ron's connected respectable. "I'm just you're the lawful heir with documented evidence of a crime." He was already reaching for his phone. "I have a friend in the DA's office who specializes in elder abuse cases." Ron Dorset picked the wrong family to steal from. As Kessler made calls, I touched the leather folder containing Grandpa's real will. His handwriting on a sticky note caught my eye. "For my Jenny, be brave. Your dad would be proud." Ron thought bruises would silence me. He thought destroying my phone would kill the truth. But he'd forgotten who raised me until I was 12, who taught me that bullies only understand one language: consequences. The bruises would fade. The phone could be replaced. But the evidence was forever, and the trap was already closing around him. He just didn't know it yet. Kessler wasted no time. Within hours, we'd filed the authentic will and secured an emergency hearing for an injunction. But I knew we needed more than legal documents to nail Ron. We needed to follow the money. "I want to hire a forensic accountant," I told Kessler after we left the courthouse. He raised an eyebrow. "That's expensive. Could run several thousand." "I'll pay for it myself." 3 years of living cheap had left me with savings. Grandpa's signature wasn't the only thing Ron forged. Kessler recommended Sarah Nan, a forensic accountant who testified in several high-profile fraud cases. We met in her downtown office at 4:30 p.m. that same day. Sarah was all business, taking notes as I explained the situation. "I'll need access to your grandfather's financial records," she said. "Bank statements, investment accounts, any documentation you can get." Ron might have already cleaned out the accounts. Sarah smiled. "Money always leaves a trail. Always." The court granted our injunction the next morning, freezing all of Peter's assets. Ron would have been served notice at his office. I wished I could have seen his face. Sarah got to work, immediately subpoenaing records from 3 banks and 2 investment firms. What she found made my blood run cold. "Your grandfather had approximately $800,000 in various accounts," Sarah reported 3 days later. "Starting 2 months ago, there were significant cash withdrawals, $70,000 over 6 transactions, all requiring in-person authorization. When Grandpa was supposedly too sick to contact his real lawyer, I said, 'Exactly, but here's the interesting part.'" She pulled up bank security footage on her laptop. "This is your grandfather at First National withdrawing $10,000 in cash. Notice anything?" I leaned closer. Grandpa looked frail, confused. And there, just out of full frame, was a familiar figure. "That's Ron's shoulder. That's his watch. He was present for every withdrawal. Now look at this." Sarah switched screens. 4 days after your grandfather's death, a Mercedes S-Class was purchased for $42,000 cash, registered to Ronald Dorset. He couldn't even wait for the funeral. I whispered, "There's more." 2 months before your grandfather's death, Claire Dorset was added as a joint account holder on his primary checking. The signature card. Sarah zoomed in. "I've compared it to 12 other examples of Peter Walsh's signature. This is a forgery." The evidence was damning, but I needed Mom to understand what she'd married. I called her that evening, asked her to meet me at a coffee shop in Selwood Neutral Ground. She looked older than her 53 years, stress etched in every line. "Ron's furious about the injunction," she said without preamble. "Says you're destroying our family." "Mom, when's the last time you saw Grandpa?" She blinked at the unexpected question. Ron said it wasn't good for Peter, the confusion, that seeing too many people upset him. "Did you know Ron was taking him to banks, making him withdraw cash?" "That's not Ron said Peter wanted to give us gifts," that he insisted. I showed her the bank footage on my phone, watched her face crumble as she recognized the truth. Her husband escorting a confused old man to ATMs, counting bills in the parking lot. "Oh God," she breathed. "Oh my God. Mom, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you see Grandpa sign a new will?" Tears streamed down her face. "No. Ron said he said Peter had signed it at the lawyer's office. That I didn't need to be there." She grabbed my hand. "Jenner, I swear I didn't know. I thought I wanted to believe. I know. And I did." Mom had always chosen the comfortable lie over the difficult truth. It's how she'd survived 17 years with Ron. What's going to happen? Her voice was small, scared. Ron's going to pay for what he did. Kyle and Trent, too, if they were involved. They were. The admissions seemed to surprise her. I heard them talking last week. Kyle said something about earning their shares. I didn't understand then, but now. Mom, I need you to write down everything you remember. Every conversation, every strange incident with Grandpa's care. Can you do that? She nodded, then surprised me by squaring her shoulders. I've been a coward for 17 years. Letting Ron control everything push you away. Your father would be ashamed of me. It's not too late, I said gently. We can fix this. Ron will make things ugly. He'll try to destroy you. I touched my still tender ribs. He already tried. It didn't work. At night, Sarah called with another discovery. I've traced the notary seal on the forged documents. It belongs to someone who lost their license 2 years ago for fraud. Guess who handled their defense? Ron's law firm. Inga. This isn't his first forgery rodeo. The pieces were falling into place. Financial fraud, forged signatures, a pattern of elder abuse. And now we had Mom as a potential witness. Ron had built his crime on the assumption that I'd stay silent, stay scared, stay away. He'd assumed wrong. We have enough for criminal charges, Kessler said when I updated him. The DA's office wants to meet tomorrow. Tomorrow, after 17 years of being invisible, tomorrow I would stand up and demand justice. Not just for me, but for Grandpa, who'd loved me even when I couldn't visit. For Mom, who was finally ready to see the truth. Even for Ron's victims we didn't know about yet. The bruises were fading to yellow-green, but my resolve had never been stronger. Ron thought he'd beaten me in that living room. He was about to learn he'd only lit a fuse. The formal petition to invalidate Ron's forged will was filed on a Thursday morning. Kessler had crafted it like a legal sledgehammer. Each paragraph another blow to Ron's scheme. Fraud, forgery, undue influence, elder abuse. The words looked strange typed out in cold legal ease, but they were my truth. He'll be served within 24 hours. Kessler informed me. Be prepared for retaliation. He didn't have to tell me twice. I'd already changed my locks, installed a security camera outside my apartment, and started parking in different spots. 3 years working in law had taught me that cornered criminals rarely went quietly. Ron's first move came faster than expected. Friday afternoon, my boss called me into his office. Jenner, I received a concerning letter from Dorset and Associates. He held up a cease and desist order. They claim you're harassing their client and misusing information obtained through your employment here. My hands clenched. Ron Dorset assaulted me and forged my grandfather's will. This is intimidation. I believe you. His expression was sympathetic but firm. But I can't have the firm dragged into your family dispute. Take a leave of absence until this is resolved. Paid, he added quickly. We support you, but from a distance. I cleaned out my desk, feeling Ron's reach extending everywhere. But if he thought unemployment would break me, he'd miscalculated. Now I had nothing but time to build our case. The rumors started next. Mom called Sunday night, voice shaking. Ron's been calling family members, telling them you had a breakdown at work, that you're delusional about Peter's will. He's saying you need psychiatric help. Let him talk, I said. The evidence speaks louder than gossip. But it's Tom. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly reached out with concern about my mental health. Old family friends suggested I get help. Ron was painting me as the unstable granddaughter trying to steal from her own mother. Classic gaslighting, but effective. Then he escalated. Tuesday evening at 7:45 p.m. I was carrying groceries to my apartment when footsteps echoed behind me in the parking garage. I turned to find Ron standing by my car, hands in his coat pockets. We need to talk, he said. I had found my phone already recording. My attorney advises against any direct contact. Their attorney? He laughed harsh and bitter. You mean the ambulance chaser helping you destroy your mother? She cries every night because of you. You mean because of what you did? I kept my distance keys between my fingers. The forensic accountant found everything wrong. The withdrawals, the car purchase, the forged signatures. His face darkened. You have no idea what you're messing with. I have connections. Judges who golf at my club. DAs who owe me favors. This little crusade of yours ends now, or I'll bury you in legal fees until you're living in that car. Is that a threat? He stepped closer. I backed against my Hunter phone held high. It's reality. Drop the petition. Tell Kessler you made a mistake or things get worse. Like they did for Grandpa. Did you threaten him too before you robbed him? The mask slipped completely. Ron's hand shot out, grabbing for my phone again, but I was ready this time. I dodged left, screaming, "Help! Someone help!" as loud as I could. The sound echoed through the concrete structure. "Shut up!" He cornered me against a pillar. "You stupid little hay!" A voice boomed across the garage. My neighbor Marcus, all 6'4" of him, was jogging toward us. "Back off, man." Ron stepped away, composing himself instantly. "Just a family discussion." Didn't look like it. Marcus positioned himself between us. "You okay, Jenner? Call 911. I gasped, still recording. "This man is threatening me." Ron's face cycled through rage calculation and finally cold control. "This isn't over," he said quietly, then walked away. The police took my statement, watched the video, documented everything. The officer, a young woman named Gutierrez, was thorough. "Has he threatened you before? He assaulted me last week." I filed her report with Salem PD. Her expression hardened. "We'll be in touch with them. In the meantime, consider a restraining order." Kessler was triumphant when I sent him the video. "He just handed us a gift. Witness intimidation, threats, attempted assault, and all recorded. The DA will love this." We filed for an emergency restraining order. The next morning, Ron was ordered to stay 500 ft away from me. No contact through third parties. Mom called that afternoon crying. "He's been served with so many papers. The restraining order, criminal investigation notices. Jenner, he's talking about suing you for defamation. Good luck with that. Truth is an absolute defense. Kyle and Trent are moving back in. They say it's to support us," but she lowered her voice. I found text messages. They knew about the forged will. They were promised money. "Screenshot everything," I urged. "Send them to me." "Mom, you need to protect yourself. Do you have somewhere safe to go?" "My sister in Eugene, but if I leave, he'll know you're against him." I understood her fear. "When you're ready, I'll help. For now, document everything you can." The investigation was gaining momentum. Sarah had uncovered more disturbing patterns. Elder abuse complaints against Ron from a previous client's family settled quietly out of court. Kessler was building a timeline that showed systematic planning dating back months. The DA's office was preparing charges. But Ron wasn't finished. That Friday, a process server found me at the coffee shop where I'd been working on case files. "You've been served," he said, handing me papers. A civil lawsuit. Ron was suing me for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with family relations. He wanted $2 million in damages. I laughed, actually laughed right there in the coffee shop. The server looked concerned. "Sorry," I said. "It's just he steals from my dead grandfather and then sues me for calling him a thief. You can't make this up." Kessler was less amused. "This is a slap-suit strategic lawsuit to silence you. It won't succeed, but it'll cost money to defend. Let him waste his stolen cash on lawyers," I said. "Every document he files is more evidence of his guilt." The war was escalating, but I wasn't backing down. Ron had controlled my family through fear for 17 years. He'd isolated me from my grandfather, stolen his final months, and his money. Now he was learning what happened when fear stopped working, when the invisible girl finally decided to be seen. The bruises had faded. The threats were documented. The evidence was overwhelming, and I was just getting started. The probate courtroom smelled like old wood and disappointment. I sat at the petitioner's table with Kessler watching Ron's legal team file and like a pack of expensive suits. Ron himself entered last, projecting confidence. He didn't deserve Claire trailing behind him like a ghost. Kyle and Trent took seats in the gallery, whispering to each other. They'd both worn ties, trying to look respectable. It might have worked if I hadn't seen Kyle's name on the bank footage Sarah uncovered. He'd driven Grandpa to one of those withdrawals. Judge Patricia Haywood presided, a silver-haired woman with eyes that missed nothing. She'd reviewed our emergency petition and the mountain of evidence we'd submitted. Now came the hearing to determine which will was valid. "Mr. Kessler," she began, "you may present your case." Kessler stood, 30 years of courtroom experience evident in his bearing. "Your Honor will prove that the will submitted by Mr. Dorset is not only fraudulent, but part of a larger pattern of elder abuse and financial exploitation." He laid out our evidence methodically. "The original will properly executed with witnesses, video testimony from those witnesses, Grandpa's mental evaluation showing full competency when he'd signed it, then the forensic evidence, forged signatures, impossible timelines, the mysterious new lawyer who didn't exist in any bar registry." Objection. Ron's attorney, a sharp-faced man named Brennan, interrupted. "Counsel is making criminal allegations in a civil proceeding." Overruled. Judge Haywood said coolly, "The validity of the will directly relates to these allegations." Continue. "Mr. Kessler." Kessler introduced the bank records. $70,000 in cash withdrawals. The Mercedes purchased with that cash. Security footage showing Ron escorting my confused grandfather to ATMs. Furthermore, Kessler continued, "We have evidence that Mr. Dorset prevented the dean from contacting his attorney of record and isolated him from his granddaughter, his chosen heir. When Brennan cross-examined, he tried to paint me as a gold digger who'd abandoned her grandfather. Ms. Walsh hadn't seen Peter Walsh in over a decade. Now she appears when there's money involved. My client was systematically prevented from visiting." Kessler objected. "We have documentation." "I'll allow the question," the judge said. I was called to testify. My hands trembled as I took the oath, but my voice stayed steady. I told the truth. Every blocked visit, every intercepted letter, every time Ron had found an excuse to keep me away. He told me I was upsetting Grandpa. I said that my visits confused him. I was 22 and stupid enough to believe it. "But you didn't try harder," Bren pressed. "You gave up." "I was young and intimidated by my stepfather. I regret that every day. But that doesn't give Ron the right to steal Grandpa's estate." Then came the harder questions about the assault. I described the will, reading the attack, showing the court photos of my bruises. The partial video from my destroyed phone played on the courtroom monitor. Ron's voice talking about getting this done before Kessler shows. Ron's face remained impassive, but I saw Claire flinch. "Your witness," Kessler said. Brennan called Ron to testify. He was smooth. I'd give him that. In his version, Grandpa had come to him worried about leaving everything to a granddaughter who'd abandoned him. The new will was Grandpa's idea. The cash withdrawals were gifts Grandpa insisted on making, and the assault, Kessler asked on cross. "A misunderstanding," Ron said smoothly. Jenner was hysterical, waving her phone around. I tried to calm her down. She fell. She fell, and you accidentally stepped on her phone 3 times. It was chaotic. I didn't see it. Kessler played the parking garage video next. Ron threatening me, grabbing for my phone, backing me against my car. His smooth denials crumbled under the weight of his own words. "I have connections. Judges who golf at my club." Then came the surprise witness. The petitioner calls Claire Dorset. Ron's head snapped up. Brennan objected furiously. Spousal privilege, improper notice, every excuse he could think of. But Claire was already walking to the stand, her face set with determination. "I waive privilege," she said clearly. She testified for 20 minutes how Ron had gradually taken control of their finances, how he insisted on handling Grandpa's care alone, the conversations she overheard between him and his sons about their shares, and finally the admission that destroyed Ron's case. "I never saw Peter sign any will," she said, looking directly at the judge. "Ron told me it was handled. He said I didn't need to worry about details." Mrs. Dorset. Brennan tried desperately. "Are you sure you're remembering correctly?" "Unsure about what I didn't see," she replied. "And unsure my husband has been lying to me for months." Kyle and Trent shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They hadn't expected their mother to turn. Judge Haywood had seen enough. Unprepared to rule. The will submitted by Mr. Dorset is invalid. Multiple indicators of fraud, including credible evidence of forged signatures and suspicious circumstances surrounding its creation, she continued, voice growing stern. Furthermore, the evidence presented suggests criminal conduct that this court will refer to the district attorney's office. The original will prepared by Mr. Kessler and properly executed is validated. MS. Walsh is the sole beneficiary of Peter Walsh's estate. The gavel came down like thunder. Ron erupted. This is that money belongs to my family. Mr. Dorset, control yourself, the judge warned. She's a nobody. He pointed at me. A paralegal playing dress-up. I built a life for Claire, gave her everything. With stolen money, I said quietly. He lunged toward me, but the bait was ready. Within seconds, Ron was in handcuff, still shouting about connections and favors owed. Mr. Dorset, Judge Haywood said coldly, you just earned yourself contempt charges. Valet, remove him. As they dragged him out, he locked eyes with me. The mask was completely gone now, showing the small, vicious man underneath. Claire stood frozen, tears streaming. I'm sorry, she whispered to me. I'm so sorry. I know, Mom. Kyle and Trent slunk out. Without a word, their inheritance dreams shattered. Kessler was jubilant as we left the courthouse. Complete victory. The estate is yours, and the criminal referral means the DA has to act. But I barely heard him. I was thinking about Grandpa alone in that farmhouse while Ron circled like a vulture. Justice in probate court was just the beginning. Ron thought this was over. He was wrong. The civil judgment was done, but criminal court waited, and I'd be there for every moment. No longer invisible, no longer silent. The bruises he'd given me had faded, but the bruises he'd left on my family's soul would take longer to heal. Good thing I'd learned patience. The real reckoning was just beginning. The criminal case moved faster than anyone expected. District Attorney Rebecca Dunn took personal interest after reviewing the probate court transcript. A former elder abuse prosecutor, she had zero tolerance for predators who targeted the vulnerable. Your evidence is solid, she told Kessler and me in her office 2 weeks after the probate ruling. But I want more. The sons were involved. I want them too. That's when I played my ace. My mother has text messages between Kyle, Trent, and Ron, planning the whole thing. Mom had moved in with her sister and Eugene, finally free from Ron's shadow. She'd given me everything. Screenshots, emails, even recorded conversations where Kyle bragged about earning his cut by driving Grandpa to Banks. DA Dunn's eyes lit up. Get me those messages. We'll charge all three. The grand jury indictment came down on a Thursday. Ronald Dorset, Kyle Dorset, and Trent Dorset. Charges included forgery, financial, elder abuse, fraud, assault, and criminal conspiracy. Kyle and Trent were picked up at their shared apartment. Ron was arrested at his law firm in front of colleagues and clients. The local media court wind immediately. Prominent attorney charged an elder abuse scheme ran across the evening news. My phone exploded with calls from reporters, but I let Kessler handle them. This wasn't about publicity. It was about justice. Ron made bail within hours. Of course, $100,000 was nothing to a man with stolen money and wealthy friends. Kyle and Trent weren't so lucky they sat in county jail for 3 days before someone posted their bonds. Then, the real media storm hit. A journalist named David Park from the Oregonian had been investigating elder abuse in wealthy families. He'd noticed patterns in Ron's previous legal work. Elderly clients whose wills mysteriously changed near death. Family members cut out assets flowing to new beneficiaries connected to Ron's circle. I'd like to interview you, Park said when he called. Your case could expose a larger pattern. I hesitated. Going public meant losing any remaining privacy. But then I thought about other families Ron might have destroyed, other grandchildren who'd been silenced. Okay, I said, but I stay anonymous. The article ran Sunday morning. The Bill Hunters. How Portland attorney allegedly preyed on dying clients. My story was the centerpiece told through court documents and anonymous quotes. But Park had found 3 other families with similar experiences. Ron's pattern was clear. Identify wealthy, isolated, elderly clients become indispensable, isolate them from family, then strike. By Monday, two more families had come forward. The DA added additional charges. Ron's law firm suspended him pending investigation. His country club revoked his membership. The empire built on stolen money was crumbling. But Ron wasn't done fighting. His legal team filed motion after motion, trying to suppress evidence, dismiss charges, change venues. Each hearing meant facing him across a courtroom, watching him play the wrongfully accused pillar of society. Claire testified before the grand jury, her voice steady as she detailed 17 years of financial manipulation. He controlled everything, she said. I couldn't even write a check without his permission. I thought it was for our protection. Now I know it was practice for what he did to Peter. The pressure cracked Kyle first. 3 weeks before trial, his lawyer approached the DA about a deal. Kyle would testify against his father in exchange for reduced charges. He says he has recordings. DA Dunn told me apparently he started taping conversations when Ron began cutting him out of the profits. The recordings were damning. Ron explaining how to manipulate Grandpa, confuse him about dates, tell him Kessler retired, keep mentioning how Jenner abandoned him. Old people hate ingratitude. Kyle's voice responding. What if he tries to call someone? That's why we took his phone. Told him it's broken, getting repaired. He believes whatever we tell him now. Listening to those tapes in the DA's office, I had to leave the room. The calculated cruelty, the casual destruction of an old man's dignity. It was worse than I'd imagined. Trent folded 2 days later, not wanting to be the only one without a deal. His testimony revealed the full scope. Ron had done this at least 4 times before, always settling when families got suspicious, using his legal knowledge to skirt just shy of provable crimes. But this time, he got greedy. Trent admitted Peter had more money than the others, and Dad figured Jenner would never fight back. Ron again. Ron, the media coverage intensified. Park's follow-up articles detailed the investigation, the other victims, the systemic failures that allowed Ron to operate. The state bar opened an ethics investigation. Civil lawsuits from other families piled up. Ron's attorney tried one last gambit: mental health, stress, depression, a breakdown caused by financial pressures. The loving husband and father who'd made terrible mistakes while suffering psychological distress. He's setting up an insanity defense. Dardum warned, don't be surprised if he shows up to court looking haggard, playing the victim. But we had one more card to play. Mom had found something while packing to leave: Ron's journal. He'd kept meticulous notes about his schemes, convinced they'd never be discovered. Names, dates, amounts, and his true feelings about the families he destroyed. About me, he'd written, the granddaughter remains a potential problem. Too emotional, asks too many questions, may need to discredit her if she interferes. Mental health angle, history of instability could be fabricated about Grandpa P. Walsh deteriorating faster than expected. Excellent timing. Estimate 4 weeks before complete dependency achieved. The journal destroyed any sympathy Ron might have garnered. Here was the predator exposed, documenting his hunts with sociopathic precision. As the trial date approached, I sometimes sat in Grandpa's farmhouse, now legally mine, but feeling empty without him. The old chess set still waited on the porch table. I'd found his final letter to me in a drawer dated just a month before he died. My Jenny, if you're reading this, then Ron couldn't keep us apart forever. I knew what he was doing, but I was too weak to stop him. Be stronger than I was. The truth always finds a way. Love or Grandpa. He'd known, and he trusted me to make it right. The criminal trial was set for next month. Ron faced up to 15 years if convicted on all counts. Kyle and Trent would testify against him, their own fates depending on their cooperation. Mom would take the stand again, finally free to speak her truth. And I would be there, visible at last, speaking for Grandpa and all of Ron's victims who couldn't speak for themselves. The bruises had long faded, but the evidence was forever, and justice, though delayed, was finally coming due. The day of Ron's arraignment, I dressed carefully, not for him, but for Grandpa. The same blue suit I'd worn to my first day at the law firm, the one that made me feel capable of anything. Outside the courthouse, news vans lined the street. David Park's investigative series had turned our family tragedy into a symbol of elder abuse in Oregon. I walked past the cameras without comment, Kessler at my side. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Other families Ron had allegedly swindled filled the gallery. Mom sat in the front row with her sister, finally ready to see this through. Ron entered in an orange jumpsuit, the polished attorney persona stripped away. His lawyer, Brennan, looked tired. Defending the indefensible had that effect. Kyle and Trent were brought in separately, both avoiding their father's glare. "How do you plead to the charge of forgery in the first degree?" Judge Michael Torres asked. Ron stirred. For a moment I thought he'd maintain his innocence, drag this out through a trial that would traumatize Mom further. Then his shoulders sagged. "Your Honor," Brennan interrupted, "we'd like to discuss a plea arrangement." The DA stood immediately. "The state has already rejected multiple plea offers. We are ready for trial. If Mr. Dossett is willing to allocate to admit his crimes on record, would the state reconsider?" D. Dunn glanced at me. I thought of all the families in the gallery waiting for acknowledgement of their pain. A trial would bring that, but at what cost? More trauma, more time, more of Ron's poison spreading through our lives. I nodded slightly. "If Mr. Dossett provides a full confession, including any additional victims, the state would consider a plea agreement," Dunn said carefully. What followed was extraordinary. For the next hour, Ron detailed his crimes, not just against Grandpa, but 4 other elderly clients over 8 years. He explained his methods, identifying isolated seniors with substantial assets, becoming their trusted advisor, systematically cutting off family connections, then manipulating documents as their health declined. Peter Walsh was supposed to be easy. Ron said, his voice flat. His granddaughter hadn't visited in years. He was showing signs of confusion, but he was stronger than I anticipated. He kept asking for Jenner, wanting to change his will to ensure she was protected. That's why I had to accelerate things by forging his will. Judge Torres clarified. "Yes, I created the document and convinced Claire it was legitimate. I needed Peter to withdraw cash before he became too incapacitated to visit banks. The money was for personal debts." "Gambling?" the judge asked. Ron's jaw tightened. "Investment losses. I'd borrowed from other client accounts to cover them. Peter's money was going to fix everything." The full picture emerged. Ron wasn't just a predator. He was a desperate man robbing the elderly to cover his own failures. Each victim had been a bandage on a financial wound that kept growing. "And your sons?" Day pressed. "Kyle drove Peter to banks. Trent helped create false documentation. They were promised $20,000 each from the estate." Behind me, someone sobbed. Another family recognizing their story in Ron's confession. When it ended, Judge Torres looked disgusted. "Mr. Dossett, you've admitted to systematic exploitation of society's most vulnerable members. You betrayed your professional oath, your family's trust in basic human decency." The plea agreement was entered guilty on all counts. Sentencing would follow in 30 days, but the judge warned Ron to expect no leniency. Kyle and Trent entered their own guilty to lesser charges, with recommendations for probation based on their cooperation. As they led Ron away, he turned to look at me. The man who terrorized my family for 17 years, who'd beaten me for seeking truth, who'd stolen Grandpa's final months. He looked small, ordinary, pathetic. "I hope it was worth it," I said quietly. He had no answer. Outside, the media swarmed. This time, I stopped at the microphones. "My grandfather, Peter Walsh, died believing in justice," I said. "Today he got it. But this isn't just about one family. Elder abuse is an epidemic hiding in plain sight. If someone you love is being isolated, if their finances suddenly change, if they seem afraid, don't stay silent. Don't be invisible. Speak up." David Park caught up with me afterward. "What's next for you?" I thought about it. The farm was mine now, along with Grandpa's recovered assets. I could return to my paralegal job, pretend the last months never happened, or I'm applying to law school. I said elder law. Grandpa would have liked that. 3 weeks later, at Ron's sentencing, Judge Torres delivered the maximum 4 years for the forgery and fraud, 2 years for assault sentences to run concurrently. With good behavior, he'd be out in 3 years. It didn't feel like enough, but it was something. The civil lawsuits would take whatever money he had left. The state bar had already disbarred him. Kyle and Trent got probation and community service. They'd avoid prison, but would live with their choices forever. Mom was there stronger now, divorcing Ron and rebuilding her life. "I'm proud of you," she whispered as Ron was led away in shackles. The last image I have of Ron Dorset is his back disappearing through the courtroom door, heading to prison. The man who'd smashed my phone to silence me, who'd thought bruises would buy my fear, who'd forgotten that truth is stronger than any lie. I drove to Grandpa's farm that afternoon, to the place where this all began. The chess set still waited on the porch. I sat in his chair setting up the pieces, the way he taught me when I was 12, and grieving another loss. "Checkmate," I whispered to the empty chair across from me. In the distance, a second camera, the one on the mantel, Ron never noticed, stood quiet sentinel, just like Grandpa had planned. He'd known someone would come for his money. He'd prepared for it. He trusted me to finish the game, and I had. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss your thoughts on this tale of family justice and standing up to those who prey on the vulnerable. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel and hit the like button. And don't forget to press the hype button to help more people discover this video. Your support means everything. Until next time, stay strong and never be afraid to speak your truth. Thanks for watching.